Helen Vendler. She's the top scholar. I'm from Harvard. I'm from Harvard. And don't, as long as she doesn't drink all my coffee. So she's from Harvard. And pronounce it correctly, please. Harvard. Okay. A Route of Evanescence. We're reading Emily Dickinson's poems. You have a comment here? The poem is actually the old number 1463. The new fad is to say it's 1489. But now that we mixed them all up, we just say the first line of the poem. A route of evanescence with a revolving wheel, a resonance of emerald, a rush of cochineal, and every blossom on the bush. A justice tumbled head, the mail from Tunis probably, an early morning's ride.
Easy morning's ride.
An easy morning's ride. Can't even read. When sending this poem to her Norcross cousins, Dickinson affixed as her signature, quote, Hummingbird. Confirming our...
Because of the colors, emerald, reasons of emerald.
Confirming our intuition that many of her nature poems... Remember she called herself the bird? Remember how Samuel Bowles shot her bird down? She's a bird. Now that we're top scholars, well, we have a scholar with us here. Remember, she is like the bird, and many of her poems are called her flowers. So here she's even signs Hummingbird. Confirming our intuition that many of her poems are embody these subjects, allegories of herself as an artist. The clearest sign of that indication here is the poem's creating of a chimera, a creature combining two species. The hummingbird, as she referred to it with two capitals, to Thomas Wentworth Higginson and other correspondents, combines the natural with the mechanical. The winged bird gets from place to place on a wheel. But what sort of wheel? The image gave Dickinson trouble when composing the poem. She looked for an adjective to characterize the, quote, wheel, unquote, of art. To what extent is art, the mechanism that brings nature to the page, reliable? Her temporarily final version of the wheel in a version A was a, quote, a delusive wheel. Nature is real, art but a copy, such an accurate copy that the deluded reader believes it to be real. But he, before settling temporarily on a, quote, delusive wheel, Dickinson had considered other possibilities, a, quote, a dissolving wheel, art is evanescent. A dissembling wheel, art is deliberately misleading, and a, quote, renewing wheel, art refreshes life. Hummingbird reverses the old proverb, ars longa vita brevis. Life is short, but art is long. Ars brevis vita longa, ars vita longa. Art, life is short, but art is long. Delusive, the poet's first final choice, carries no implication that the artist wishes to delude, as does dissembling. It means only that the observer is deluded, because the appearance of the bird on the page is so realistic. You want to read the poem again?
A route of evanescence with a revolving wheel, a resonance of emerald, a rose of cochineal, and every blossom on the bush, a justice tumbled head, the mail from Tunis, probably an easy morning's ride. Route of evanescence with a revolving wheel. Quite a poem, not easy to understand it.
Sending two poems, one of the Oreo, and a version of this one with revolving instead of delusive to the writer.
Quite some pages here.
Look, she wrote to the writer Helen Hunt Jackson. This is women to women.
Why
here.
she writes the mail from Tunisia? It's like the capital.
Dickinson
of
wrote of her aspiration to accuracy, quote, I hope they are not untrue. The poem says a route to evanescence with a revolving wheel, the resonance of emerald, a rush of cochineal, and every blossom on the bush adjusts its tumbled head. The mail from Tunis, probably an easy morning's ride.
It says in Tunis, you know, the capital of Tunisia, you have the old Cathars, the Greek city, Cathars in ancient Greece,
Yeah.
where during the Roman Empire they conquered, the Romans conquered. And they do have a lot of beautiful ancient temples, columns.
All Dickinson's early chosen wheel adjectives reviewed above embody issues of truth and permanence. If art, even though not dissembling, is, quote, dislusive, unquote, if art, even if it is, quote, renewing, unquote, is ultimately, unquote, quote, dissolving, unquote, what can Dickinson truthfully say about her art, as herself as artist, question mark, ceasing to characterize the wheel with an intrinsic epistemological adjective of the sort. She had been meditating. She moves to a mechanical objective more suitable to a wheel setting it in motion. Revolving becomes her permanent final choice, in part because it continues as the previously listed adjectives in did, not, to not, the run of alliteration and R, which, beginning with route, continues immediately with resonance and rush before terminating in ride, is Dickinson's choice of revolving, an evasion of the moral and metaphysical problems raised by the earlier run of adjectives of cognition, renewing, dissembling, dissolving, and delusive. It is truer, perhaps, to say that the poet, examining her own practice of art, decided that art is above all the continued activity of moving its objects from one region to the another. The revolving wheel of art conducts the whirling hummingbird of nature to the symbolic region of the page. The rest of the poem remained unchanged as Dickinson sent it out to other correspondents with her own revolving wheel of language moving as fast as the hummingbird. Dickinson speeds to the metaphors suggested to her by the teeny bird's sound and color as she sips nectar from the blossoms of a nearby bush. Her sensitive ear picks up his whirl and rush and synthesizes them with the hummingbird's colors, for which the names green and red would be, she implies, far too common. Whoever painted the bird.
I'm sorry.
Could you pay attention and get off your phone?
I'm working for the poem.
This
I'm
is
looking at resonance.
Dear, at Harvard classes, you're not allowed on your phone.
That's what I'm doing. I'm studying
He's a
the
top.
chemistry,
Dear.
what she means by resonance, you know, resonance of emerald. And
Okay.
here they have a number of videos about the chemical resonance.
All right,
materials.
you're doing research. She's doing research into
so resonance
Emily.
structures they have. We have
The
to check that.
purpose of the phone is to do research into Emily's
Did she go
words.
so far? It's a way of describing delocalized electrons within certain molecules of polyatomic ions where the bonding cannot be expressed by one single
What's that word?
device of resonance.
Resonance. Oh, resonance.
Of emerald.
Oh,
Now,
resonance.
I'd like to know what is the resonance of emerald
Resonance.
chemically.
Oh, resonance. Well, resonance. Resonance just means, oh, goodness. Probably not a physical word. The rest of the poem remained unchanged as Dickinson sent it out to other correspondents. In her whirling wheel of language moving as fast as a hummingbird, Dickinson speaks to the metaphor suggested to her by the teeny bird's sound and colors as he sips the nectar from the blossoms of a nearby bush. Her sensitive ear picks up the whirl and rush and synthesizes them with the hummingbird's colors, for which the names green and red would be, she implies, far too common. Whatever painted the bird dipped his brush first in paint in such a dazzling green as to deserve the name emerald, then in a scarlet paint as vivid as cochineal, a brilliant red dye made out of the dried bodies of insects, Coccus cochrae. Dickinson liked cochineal and used it again, teaming it with mazinrin, a dark blue paint color, and in I found the words to every thought. No sooner has he come than the hummingbird is gone, leaving the bush in a state of agitation, like a gentleman who briefly passes through a room of young girls, leaving them in a flutter. The bird has unsettled every blossom on the bush, and each must readjust her tumbled curls. The hummingbird is so inappropriate and is so inapprehensible in his evanescence that the brief visible effect on the blossoms is the only way to track his kinetic speed. It would be too mundane, however, to imagine that such an exotic creature has no purpose but to sip nectar. Such is the urgency of his visit that the poet speculates that he has a route like a postal courier and is bringing mail from a faraway place. This is my letter to the world, Dickinson once wrote longingly, and the hummingbird delivers such letters. When from Tunis, perhaps it has been suggested because Tunis is in faraway Africa, is mentioned in The Tempest as the very figure of the remotest place where Carabelle can have no note from her father Alonso, lest the sun were post. The Tempest, Act 2, Scene 1. After the tumbling of ours.
I wanted to show you guys how fast you can actually solve this problem and how simple it actually is. And so
What's that,
before we begin,
dear?
the first
We're
thing I
on
want you
tape
to
here.
know or think about
Resonance
is
made
that
easy. Finding
just think
the
about
most stable
resonance
resonance
as
structure.
simply
You
Did you
can't
taking
turn
tell.
that
electrons
off?
from the area that has
Hey, the
excess
class.
electrons, so it's usually going to be a
We
negative
don't
charge.
like the phones. Turn off the silent mode while you're in class. Okay.
I wonder how.
After the tumbling of ours, route, revolving, resonance, rush, and ride, Dickinson links blossom to bush by their corresponding B's, letters which reappears inside tumbled, then starting with the M in tumbled. The male comes when else in the eluding morning, the indefinite article introducing all the qualities of the bird, a route, a wheel, a resonance, a rush. An easy morning's ride is indicator of bewilderment that Yeats used to represent Lita's sudden apprehension of the Jove's swan. A sudden blow, the feeling of a white rush, a shudder in the loins. These gestures towards indefinite meaning confess an inner tumult in synchrony with the outward disturbance. This is one of the few poems given a title by Dickinson herself, when she sent it to Higginson explaining that it was intended contribution to a sale conducted by a local charity. She purveyed it with a title, A Hummingbird, since she nowhere in the poem names the bird. This glittering but colloquial little lyric falls into the ancient genre of the riddle. Can you guess my name? Yes, Hummingbird. But an alternative answer would be, yes, Dickinson. A poet who arrives like the bird